say you wanna watch a drama. You say you wanna watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama, or you can watch it with your daddy.
You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler, so you can come and talk around a water cooler. We're watching all day and all night.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa. Couch potatoes unite.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name because, quote, everything in this world is magic except the magician. Sorry to ruin it for you, CPU faithful. My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU, exclamation point, is kicking its summer style and hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the blog or the podcast via iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and via Google Play to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including, but not limited to, Stranger Things, iZombie, The X-Files, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., New Girl, The Originals, The Crown, Once Upon a Time, Orange is the New Black, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, 13 Reasons Why, A Series of Unfortunate Events, and Fuller House. Plus, new episodes are in the works, including revisits for Grace and Frankie, American Horror Story, Doctor Who, The Good Place, Gotham, Schitt's Creek, Arrested Development, Game of Thrones, Supernatural, Will and Grace. The Marvel's Defenders panel will talk Season 2 of The Punisher. The DCTU will revisit all 4 shows in the CW's Arrowverse, and the Star Trek 50 Plus series panel will cover Season 2 of the original series. We'll be launching new panels covering Jane the Virgin, The Americans, Riverdale, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Altered Carbon, Mr. Robot, and Charmed. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll take a smallish look back at a short-term show from some kind of yesteryear called Freaks and Geeks. We'll reminisce about the majesty of rain, and we'll revisit one of the all-time and most-watched classic sitcoms, MASH. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers and comedy shows and Comic-Cons, and we just went live from Blue Bridge Games to take a shiny look back at Firefly. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff, so make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to the blog, our YouTube channel, our iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Play. In the meantime, if you don't hear a show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we always seek new panelists. So if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of those outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback, just don't do it Shogun World style. It would be cool to watch, but bloody and messy and, frankly, just plain rude. Today, we're around the water cooler as a continuation of a 2-part miniseries in which CPU, exclamation point, catches up on heady HBO science fiction western drama, Westworld. In this episode, part 2 of our miniseries, we're discussing Season 2, which aired from April 22nd, 2018 to June 24th, 2018, on HBO with a total of 10 episodes. To remind the listener, Westworld was created by Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy. Produced by HBO, it is based on the 1973 film of the same name, written and directed by Michael Crichton, and to a lesser extent, the film's 1976 sequel, Future World. The story takes place in Westworld, a fictional, technologically advanced, Wild West-themed amusement park populated by android hosts. The park caters to high-paying guests who may indulge their wildest fantasies within the park without fear of retaliation from the hosts, who are prevented by their programming from harming humans. In an unspecified future time period, Westworld, one of 6 theme parks owned and operated by Delos Incorporated, allows guests to experience the American Old West in an environment populated by the hosts, androids who are programmed to fulfill the guests' every desire. The hosts, who are nearly indistinguishable from humans, follow a predefined set of intertwining narratives but have the ability to deviate from these narratives based on interactions they have with the guests. The hosts repeat their multi-day narratives anew each cycle. At the beginning of each new cycle, typically following the host's death, each host has its memories of the previous period erased. This continues hundreds or thousands of times until the host is decommissioned or repurposed for use in other narratives. For guest safety, hosts' programming prevents them from physically harming human guests. This allows the guests nearly unlimited freedom to engage without retribution in any activity they choose with the hosts, including all kinds of horrible things. Staff, situated in a control center called the Mesa, which is connected to the park through vast underground facilities, oversee daily operations, develop new narratives, and perform repairs on hosts as necessary. The second season follows the aftermath of Dolores's, played by Evan Rachel Wood, uprising as she recruits a number of hosts to fight off arriving Delos security forces while looking for the key to the valley beyond, believed by the Ghost Nation to be a door to the next world. Maeve, played by Tandy Newton, continues to search for her daughter, learning that there are other parks like Westworld. William, played by Ed Harris, finds that Ford, played by Anthony Hopkins, has left him clues to find the door, quote-unquote, a new game for him to play. Today, in the second episode of our Westworld Catch-Up miniseries, we'll be focusing specifically upon Season 2 of this complex show with our ready and raring panel of hosts and guests, namely Kyle, Hillary, Samantha, Jeremy, and Ben. Before we digest more of Westworld, I'm going to take a moment to take our panel's temperature because, as we all know, sometimes a TV show can take turns for the better or the worse in our heads, or can continue its level of awesomeness or lack thereof depending upon its story evolution. As always, it should be noted that all of our panelists have viewed the entire show to date and will discuss sensitive plot points, of which there are like many hundreds of thousands in this show. So for those of you who haven't caught up on Westworld, listen at your own risk, and I do mean at your own risk, as there are going to be major spoilers. Welcome back, panel. How are you?
Awesome!
Are you ready to talk about the second season of Westworld?
Yeah.
Yes, totally.
I mean, we're gonna talk about it for sure.
Oh my. Well, there's a varying level of enthusiasm here.
There's a lot of George Takei in your inflection.
Oh my.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all. Well, I guess what I'm going to do, like I said, is take your temperature, such as was foreshadowed just now, and I will do that along this standard CPU character question, which changes with each show we do. I have tweaked it but a little, not a lot, but a little for Season 2. So I'm going to read that, and then you're going to tell us who you are and how you fall on the Season 2 scale. Sound good?
Yes.
All
Great.
right.
Let's get this party started.
That sounds so partyish. Okay. How would you rate your interest after watching Season 2 of Westworld? Were you amazed by this show, and do you adore it as you adore your own children? You believe the show is so much more than the creators originally conceived, and you're silently watching, titillated by what the future has in store, though perhaps not as consistently as you once were. In fact, some of the second season left you feeling ponderous at the story direction, even as you were intrigued by the unexpected turns, like Robert Ford. Do you believe this show is eye-opening, a fact made more possible by the second season? You believe there is purpose in peeling back the layers of its world within worlds, and you love the fact that the story explored worlds and characters with settings other than Sweetwater, like host Akecheta, hard name to say. You find it breathtaking in its splendor, but frustrating in its execution, even as it's brave, intelligent, and full of surprises. You also think there is much more behind the curtain, and that the show's producers are cutting off more than they can chew, like host Dolores Abernathy. Did you love the season's focus on love of all types, though you also found some of the characters constrained by these explorations, like host Maeve Millay? Did the show change for you, and not in a good way? It felt like a forced, unnatural change that did not follow from the Season 1 trajectory in an organic way, like host Teddy Flood. Do you enjoy the idea of the park and some of the elements of romance in the story, but ultimately find yourself devoted only to one or two characters, like Maeve, like host Hector Escatone? Do you believe the story struggles with duality and can be out of balance, even as it explores intriguing questions about humanity's spirituality and existence, like Bernard Lowe? Do you watch this show because your friends watch it, though your friends aren't always looking out for your best interests, like host Lawrence? Do you absolutely adore the dialogue of the park characters, but find some of the performances hackneyed, lackluster, and a disservice to some of the beautiful story concepts rendered by the lead character, like Lee Sizemore? Did you like Season 2 better than Season 1? For you, Season 2 showed more of the show's possibilities and core drives, if you will, than the first season, which was slow and plodding, even as they welcomed you to Westworld, like host Angela. Were you far more confused watching Season 2 than Season 1, and you still don't understand what the encryption key encrypted in the end, like Peter Abernathy? Is your interest in one character and one character alone? You need to know the backstory of the Man in Black, like Emily, also known as Grace. Do you only want to know Westworld's secrets? You have no bond or tie to the characters or the story. For you, watching is an investment in what lies beyond or beneath, like Charlotte Hale or Antoine Costa. For you, the show is an exercise in choice and consequence. It's utilitarian, even as it tests the boundaries of identity. You think the idea of a Westworld is rife with possibility as much as it is a playground for a god complex, which both intrigues you as it does frustrate you, like William, also known as the Man in Black. You don't care much for the story. Sometimes it's overcomplicated, but you love the action and the Western backdrop, as well as the strong female characters populating the ensemble cast, like host Armistice. You think the story is plainly dangerous. Westworld is a place that should never exist, even as it could be a frightening eventual future that threatens the security of the population, like Ashley Stubbs. You have no feeling about the show. In some ways, the endless cycle of death and rebirth has left you feeling like an empty shell, duped into believing what you were watching was more than the sum of its parts, like host Clementine Pennyfeather, or you hate it. You hate the idea of it at the end of the day. For you, watching this was a job, one you were willing to take on at first with excitement, such as for the podcast, but which became tedious and dangerous to your existence, or you stopped watching because you, spoiler, died, like Carl Strand. Who would like to start?
This season, I would say...
Who are you?
I'm Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
And this season, I'd say, based on those, I fall somewhere between Teddy and Emily. Teddy, because of the change in quality between the seasons, in my opinion. Emily, though, because I do watch it for the Man in Black. He's the whole reason to watch the second season. Before I don't want to get too much into why.
Did you want to do the disclaimer, or are you deferring this time?
I did it last time.
All right. Welcome back, Kyle.
I'm Hillary.
Hi, Hillary.
And I'm Kyle's wife.
That's true.
And that may come up a couple times also. Oh my gosh.
Wedded bliss.
Also, you're my sister and you're the moderator.
That's also true.
I feel like, although I already forgot and I can't re-reference because I don't have the email, that I'm still mostly Ford and Dolores, but more because of the back half. I was Ford and Dolores in the first season description, but more for the positive attributes of the character descriptions, because I really like the first season and most of the aspects about it, the acting, the storyline, the way they developed everything, the nuances, the music, and all that other stuff. Can you remind me of what they are? I'm sorry. I'm sorry to do that to you.
Ford says, you were amazed by this show and adore it as you adore your own children. You believe the show is so much more than the creators originally conceived, and you're silently watching, titillated by what the future has in store, though perhaps not as consistently as you once were. In fact, some of the second season left you feeling ponderous at the story direction, even as you were intrigued by the unexpected turns.
Yes, exactly. So I came into it with that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this second season. The first season was so good. I feel like it's a part of me. It's very important to me. But there were many aspects about the direction that left me feeling kind of disappointed. And we can talk about that more. And then the Dolores one, I think, follows the same. Because, again, it's still a breathtaking show. I think it's still... again, nuanced very well in ways. I just think that maybe is about convoluted a little bit. Things start to get a little more convoluted, and that kind of deters from the overall. It's almost like they're trying too hard. And there's probably other descriptions that fit that, but those are the ones that struck me right away. We'll talk about that, but season 2 I have more mixed feelings about.
Welcome back, Hillary, my sister.
I agree with everything that Hillary said about it being convoluted.
Who's agreeing?
Hi, I'm Samantha.
Hi, Samantha.
What's up, girl?
And so you were saying...
I feel so passionate about it, I forgot who I was.
Samantha.
So I went into it with such hope because of the high that season 1 ended, and it just came crashing down. So I am actually now a combination of 3 characters, Teddy, Bernard, and host Armistice.
Mm-hmm. Welcome back, Samantha.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeremy.
Hi,
Let's pretend
Jeremy.
We didn't do this an hour ago.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, Jeremy. Oh my
Hashtag
gosh, I haven't
edit.
seen you in so long.
Yeah, that's how you do that.
Are you older?
I am, by minutes.
I am a combination of Maeve and Antoine. I started off season 2 with, yes, answers, and I got confusion. So by the end of season 2, I really only cared about a couple different characters, and I just wanted to know the answers.
You just want to be Maeve.
Because she's bad A.
You can say badass. Badass is an acceptable term on the CPU podcast. Welcome back, Jeremy.
I'm Ben.
Hi, Ben.
I'm now a veteran of this.
You are a seasoned veteran.
You missed a lot, listeners.
Yeah, you probably missed some episodes. Go back, try and find them. For this season, I'm definitely more leaning towards Dolores in the story. Everyone else has kind of talked about it. They kind of had a lot of convoluted points in the plot. And I think it was them trying too hard to bring back that mystery and hidden meaning behind it when it kind of had just evolved into an action story at that point, and they should have let it evolve naturally. Maybe kept some of the mystery, but they tried to keep way too much into it since it was so big in the first season and so prevalent. They forced too much into it, and it left the season lesser.
And what he just said.
Yeah, I was going to say that you hit
he said it way
the nail right on the head.
Good job.
Okay.
Told you, I'm a veteran.
Welcome back, Ben, with Spice from Kyle. And of course, my name is Kylie, and I participate and moderate on this.
You're a host?
No.
Run!
There's a maze.
No!
Please don't do that. So, Westworld Season 2, I think I'm going to be the sole positive trumpet. I'm always the black sheep, but now I'm, I guess, the white sheep. I don't know. Anyway, I liked Season 2 about evenly for Season 1, but for entirely different reasons. I don't think that I feel the same way per se, but I'm going to say that for the characters, I am still for it. Still Dolores. She slips down the character scale a little bit. I'm still her, but I also would put in Akecheta.
The Ghost Nation guy.
The Ghost Nation guy. Yes.
If we're going to ruin the name, we might as well ruin the title.
The point is, I think that there is a lot of onions left to peel. I think part of the
Well, yeah, because they made way more onions than they needed to.
But I
Like
think
onion pie.
okay, let me finish and then you can talk. Moderation. I think that the reason why you're responding to it the way you are, and I think it's completely and 100% going to be how everybody feels about the show, but it's the fact that by this time they have moved away quite substantially from the source material. Am I getting that correctly?
I mean, essentially it should have been the second half of the movie where the chaos.
Right.
And how are we going to get out of this park now?
But it wasn't the same as that.
No.
No. And so I think what they were trying to do was reorient so that they could tell a Season 3 story, which we'll talk about when we get to the end of Season 2. I actually enjoyed Season 2 quite a lot. I was still as invested as I was in Season 1, though I will agree that my focal points were largely on specific characters. I think that there are some spots of the plot, especially the stuff around Bernard and kind of his and Elsie's exploration of the other sites, that started to feel like lost to me, like we were watching the Dharma Initiative all over again, and so I am going to have strong opinions about that. But largely I like what they were doing with it. It didn't come with as many twists either, so I think maybe people didn't like that as much, but I didn't mind it. But we can talk about it, so I'm probably going to disagree somewhat, but I'll let you all get your feels out. What did you think of Season 2? Well, I'll say, what did you like, what didn't you like, but I have a feeling the second half of that sentence is going to come out first.
Well, I'll tell you what I liked first.
Okay.
I thought Season 2, I enjoyed more moments, but not necessarily the whole story. I did really like the backstories you got. I like William's backstory with his wife. I like the Ghost Nation dude with his backstory.
Akecheta. I'll get it.
That's the best episode.
That was a really good episode, and I was like, I don't want to read subtitles, but it was good. But I just didn't care for the whole story and the way it was going in general. But moments were great.
I am going to piggyback on Jeremy's statement. I agree with everything that he just said, and you implied that maybe some of the reasons people didn't like it is because there were less twists. I don't agree with that at all. I don't need the twist. I just need it to be, like, developed, and there were just a lot of moments where it wasn't. I also think that like Kyle was talking about how it, in the continuity of like the original story, it's supposed to be more like the action aspect of it and all of that. Like, again, I don't need any of that. I think that's making an assumption of what's needed overall. I just think that the reasons the majority are having the reaction is because there was a very well thought out, developed storyline that happened in the first one, and they missed the mark on the second one because they were just trying, it felt like it was just still trying too hard to fit that same formula, instead of just focusing on those moments more that were already the most valuable parts of the season, like Jeremy just said. That's my personal opinion.
Well, and I think we're all a little salty because in the first season we had, oh yeah, it's slow and plotting, but with great risk comes great reward. It was worth it.
Yeah.
And in this one we're like, oh, now it's slow and plotting and we don't get a prize at the end.
There's nothing,
it ended on such a high note of the first season of, and you think, oh, all hell's breaking loose. But then they go right back to that kind of lost memory slowness and trying to figure out where you are in the timeline when you just want to jump right back into where that
again,
left
not
off.
that it needs the twist, just that it just needed to go somewhere rewarding.
Yeah.
Just the journey of it was so confusing. It's like they quadrupled down on the confusing
trying to
timeline,
intertwine the stories and the
trying to almost force, like, tricking you into not knowing what time you're in. So it started to feel like real work to watch the show and follow it. Where even though you had to pay attention in the first season, it didn't feel like work and all that effort.
Yeah, and it made more sense in the first season because you're covering decades of memories and the hosts' lives. In this, it's the span of a week, but then they broke it up so weird that it made it way overly complicated when it should have just been very straightforward.
I think that's the biggest thing. They tried to do the whole time.
Yeah, they're like, it was such a key component to the first season, they thought they needed it.
And in the end, I think it did make sense why they did it because of whose memories they were and everything. I don't know if we want to talk about it yet.
No, go ahead.
With Bernard's memories being the thing that he had scrambled himself so that he could hide the secret that he knew so that they couldn't easily read it from his mind because, as they said, like at one point, there's 20 years of memories. How long would it take to parse through them? 20 years, you know. They're not going to find what they're looking for, the encryption key, where that's located without trying to get him there. And so without him divulging it, so they can't just get it from him since he knew he had that risk of, as he's a host, he can be read. And I think part of the problem with the show wasn't necessarily that they wanted to do these things, it's that they front-loaded a lot of the stuff, a lot of the heady existentialism in the beginning. It was, I think, the first 4 episodes, and I think my wife and I watched the first 4, and then she was completely done with it and didn't want to watch it anymore. And so I fell off it for a little while. They needed to do better pacing, and I think the whole story would have gone better. And I don't mean like, you know, they needed to have that same build that they did in the first one, but they needed to pace the action with the headiness a little better, and I think
make it a little more coherent.
Made it more coherent, drawn people in, kept them engaged, where I think this just kind of pushed a lot of people away first.
I'll agree with the pacing observation for sure. I do think that it was choppier in the second season, and I do agree also with the idea that there seemed to be some forward momentum as of the season 1 finale that was pretty much negated in the season 2 premiere, because what it did was drop you at the end of this insurrection at this function and then demand that you try to figure out not only what happened, but then it also started to play again around with and I think a couple people mentioned this, the chronology again, in a way that was not as effective the first time, especially in the first 4 episodes. If they had continued sort of that chronology swirling a little bit in more of an even way, I think maybe it would have done a little bit better for pacing. That's my observation for that. What else did you like or not like?
As I mentioned, my favorite aspect is still William. He's my favorite character. I like the idea that they played with where now that everything's kind of breaking loose, he's kind of starts to revert back to the good William, like when he starts to protect hosts, even though he's so apathetic, but he starts to kind of circle back. But that also kind of made me mad at the end when he goes completely crazy, because I thought he was starting to go on this kind of redemption arc, and then they introduce his daughter and he kills her.
But which William are we watching, Kyle?
Well, I mean, technically, you get a great the great episode that flashed between the Jimmy Simpson William, and they completely showed him decade after decade, and then, which, by the way, the makeup, how they slowly transformed him into Ed Harris was really good. Mm-hmm. And also showing his kind of obsession with Dolores never left him, and that's why he saved the park.
Yeah, he couldn't let it go.
Yeah, he came up with all these reasons and excuses to save the park, essentially just because he didn't want her out of his life. I love that backstory, and then seeing him in the park, like, letting loose was great. I just didn't like where they ended him.
I guess I disagree with that because it's the Man in Black's mystery and his trajectory in the second season that's making me excited for season 3. Because I'm not even sure that I know or care about what might happen outside the park. I am kind of interested to see what they do with him if they're bringing him back, because the revelation in the season finale of season 2...
After the credits, for people who didn't wait. I did not until I read the show notes, and I was like, oh, hey, there's a hidden scene.
Who watched the end of the end credits?
I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's all raise our hands.
Yes, let's all raise our hands. Podcast, did everybody watch it then, yeah?
Yes.
No.
You didn't?
What are you talking about?
Oh my god, you do not read your email.
See, you have to pretend like Westworld Season 2 is an Avengers movie and stick around through the end credits. So...
I'm gonna mute myself. Keep going.
Okay.
I'm gonna do some quick research.
Okay, so while you're doing that, we get this earlier episode where Kyle's referring to where we see Jimmy Simpson back as young William. What he's doing is talking to who is essentially his father-in-law, right? The owner of Delos.
Yes, James, right?
Yeah, James Delos. And you're thinking as you're watching this episode that really maybe he's got Alzheimer's or what's going on? Are we just reconditioning his memory? What we find out, not only from this episode, but over the course of the second season, is that Delos, via the Man in Black character / William, is trying to figure out if they can implant human consciousness into the hosts. So, if you spoiler, stick around through the end credits of the second season, what it shows you, because we've seen, I forget who goes in there, Elsie and Bernard, are they the ones that kind of torch the place or find it torched?
Yeah, I think they find
They find the last crazy
iteration
version of
in there.
James.
Yeah, before James bites it. But he's a robot, James. Are you raising your hand?
Yes, I did see this. I just forgot.
Okay. Well, as I've already told half the story for the podcasters or the listeners that are listening, essentially what you learn is that has happened to the Man in Black. That he is, or some version of the Man in Black has become a host with the Man in Black's consciousness imprinted upon the host's inner programming. Which then raises 1,000 questions, such as, at what point did that happen?
It's the far future.
So we're saying that this William,
he's
Grace,
human. The one that had his finger shot off.
It's probably one of the things that starts to lead into
Yeah,
it.
they said it has nothing to do with this. You saw nothing for that this season.
Preview.
They're saying that's where he's going to end up in the far future, and the next season is, well, how does he go from safely out of how does he go safely out of Westworld to his own private hell?
Well, and they actually show the scene that he walks into is the facility, but it's much, much degraded at that point. So it does show that it's much further in the future, or at least further in the future. So
I know, but I don't. So I agreed.
I get your point, though. You're saying, was he a host hybrid?
All the scenes with Emily and Grace are separate and apart from all the other characters in the park. I just want to put that out there. He does not interact with the other usual characters in the park when she's around.
It's a possibility, but I think that could also still just be, I think that it's still deliberate to make you think, but I still...
And I read an interview, the writer said people were overthinking this.
Yeah.
And when he's in the park,
that
that's
was just
regular.
an inspiration I had. I didn't overthink it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, saying, oh, he was a host the entire season, but they're like, no, he was a human. We saw him. It's going to be something that's going to be explained in later seasons.
What happens with these kinds of shows is that there's already so many things. They're purposely, deliberately making these twists and things, so your mind also wants to start seeing other things, too, that they're not necessarily trying to lead you towards. I really still think, though, that ultimately the thing with the dog, I think it's going to be a cause and effect. That almost has to happen to get him to the point of where we're going to see him in the future.
I also, exactly, there's that. I also don't think I'm telling you that the Emily and Grace stuff does not fall in any kind of linear chronology that we've seen. Because it also struck me as very odd that he couldn't separate reality at that point. No matter what now the subtitle for this season is The Door.
Are you saying he's Doloresing?
I'm quite possibly, yeah. Or whatever we want to call that, just because Robert deliberately says this is the game for you, the door, right? Which you think means the door to the valley beyond. That's the door that we end up seeing in the end, right? Everybody, all the other characters, mainly the hosts, are going towards this other specific, very physically represented door. I don't think that's the door that William was meant to walk in, and I feel like the Emily Grace stuff...
I mean, Ford's revenge on him was essentially making him lose his sense of self and kill his daughter, because he hated him.
He hated what he did to the park.
Yes.
Because he was the
He
driving
hated
force behind...
what they turned the park into.
Yes.
I just don't think it's that simple. Not for daughter. I do think he was leading him down that path, but that strikes me as...
Lazy writing?
Well,
I guess
really
it ends up that way. Yeah.
They did a really good job of making him start to go crazy because of all the things he was starting to see in the park.
Right.
And begin to question what is real and what is not. Because he, at multiple times, like when he runs into Maeve and her daughter in the cabin, the same one that he had attacked them in before, he says, says something like, "Oh, this is, low Ford. This is too obvious, Ford," and trying to talk with Ford about it and just saying like, you're trying too hard about this. But we all, having seen the show and having followed it, they were there for completely different reasons than anything Ford had into him. So I think it was Ford's revenge was just saying, there's a game and it's the door. Find it. I don't think he had anything planned beyond that.
Yeah, he's just
he knew he'd drive himself crazy looking for something.
He drove himself crazy
looking
to look for the maze, so he just gave him a new objective to make sure he didn't leave the park.
That's what I took from it too.
Yeah, like that memory of how, when he kills his daughter, he's like, haha, you're a host because there's no way your mom could know that. But then it shows the memory of exactly how the mom knew it because she looked into his computer. Yeah. So it's showing how he thinks he knows how he's playing this game, and he's essentially completely wrong.
Yeah, because he's so narcissistic about it.
Yeah. So I'm going to push back. Let's assume that everything we saw is as is. Why is that a bad thing?
No, I'm fine with that. I don't want it overly complicated.
That's what we're saying. Yeah, I think
I feel like they already overly complicated Delos' evil plan. Future World did it a lot better. Because there's nothing efficient about making a duplicate of somebody's personality and put in. They keep saying it's immortality, but it's not. The person's still dead. You're just making a really bad copy.
Well, and they talk about that actually with Bernard to Arnold. They show the scene with Dolores in the Wyatt personality, training him, leading him to become Arnold.
Yeah, and she essentially says to him...
And she says, well, why would I... maybe it's a good thing Arnold wasn't perfect, or Arnold made mistakes, so let's...
And they made him just different enough from Arnold to where it took.
Yes.
When you try to make a perfect copy, they go insane. In the other source material, Delos' plan is when rich and powerful people would come to the park, they would kill them, replace them with a host that they could control, and they had this huge complicated plan of how we're going to take over the world with hosts.
You don't think we're going to see that? Not going to see that in season 3?
Delos was nowhere near that competent.
No.
I mean, no, there's no way. I mean, essentially...
So, what I'm suggesting, Kyle, is that, so everybody's kind of saying this was all convoluted, but I feel like you're hitting on the exact points that I'm responding to and why I liked it. I think what they are trying to do, or what they had tried to do, maybe they did it very clunky. I'm not going to tell you it wasn't clunky, okay? But what they did try to do was retool it for more of a sustained longevity, so that not only could there be a season 3, but maybe a 4 and a 5 and so on and so forth. Because, frankly, and I'm just going to say it like it is, without Game of Thrones, this is HBO's flagship show right now, until they come out with something else, right? And even with the Game of Thrones prequels on the way, and they've got some other stuff that they're looking at, like The Watchmen and his Dark Materials and all of that stuff, I don't think anything's going to be quite so big. So the biggest ratings monster they have right now is Westworld, and I think they're trying to figure out a way to make it go forward.
I mean, I think Dolores' plan will be Delos' plan from Future World. I think she will start to replace...
That's what I think is
happening. But I'm saying, when they're building up, like, what's the secret Delos was hiding in this park, and it was just that they were horribly, over a course of 40 years, trying to... this huge failed experiment, and they kept building up. They kept building up what is Delos hiding, and then I was disappointed by it.
Okay.
Well, I
felt like it just took away from the adventure aspect of, and just like seeing these characters,
I agree with you.
and trying to figure out what Dolores' big plan of escape was when it didn't really amount to much.
Right, because that was one of the things you got to see more of, like, the Wyatt side. So I was, like, really... I mean, I don't necessarily, again, I don't need all of that action, but I wanted to see more development towards it. We've been moving towards it, but it ultimately didn't really go really anywhere this season, even though it was there, it existed, we watched it. It just didn't have the same reward at the end. No, again, I say this till
it wasn't like
face. I didn't need the twist. I just needed something rewarding at the end.
Yeah, I mean the twists in the first season are like gasp-inducing. With this one, you get what the twist is, and you're just kind of like, oh, okay, that's what's happening. You don't get like the highs of the first season.
I guess I just disagree.
I guess I liked the show more than other people here.
Yeah.
As well.
No, I still enjoyed the show. I just don't like any of the
it.
Delos stuff or...
You get this idea of, in the first season, a theme park that is honestly unsustainable in the amount of like resources, manpower. I mean, they even talk about they don't get rid of any of the host bodies because they cost so much to make. That's why they put them in storage and have them just stand there forever. It's a huge money sink, even if it just caters to the rich and the elitists. The real goal, and the goal that William saw back in the day and that he talked the father-in-law into seeing, is the immortality aspect. I've seen what they can do. I've seen how they can make this real of a person, enough to... He fell in love with Dolores. We talked about this, and he saw her as a person till he didn't. It shows like what the driving force of a corporation would actually be, which is the end goal of immortality or some greater means to themselves. It wasn't money for them, and even the board in the first season was talking about how it was a money sink. The writer character, I can't remember his name, he wanted Lee. He wanted to revamp the stories to be like easy, vapid, surface line, just to appeal to more people, to bring them in, because they were losing repeat customers. The one part I didn't understand is they talked about how they had millions and millions of people's records on file. I was like, there's not that many rich people in the world to have that many people. Like, if they had talked about...
1% is far smaller than that.
Yes, yeah, and so that was a little far stretching, but I like the idea that it was the hat that they chose, any of the hats, and that they would read their real personality and their real drives and everything. So no matter if you chose the white hat or the black hat, it knows,
I guess I'm kind of where you are, maybe not that articulately. Because for me, so the takeaway from season 2 that I had, and I don't have the source material to fall back on. I didn't know what I was walking into. I had literally zero expectations watching Westworld season 2, other than where are they going to take this based on where season 1 ended. And to me, there was this sense, so if you're talking about a theme park which has objectives and goals and quests and games involved in it, there's almost this idea of going to a next level. And season 2 felt like them trying to go to a next level, whether that next level was exploring the depths of consciousness, exploring where humanity and artificial intelligence can marry, exploring who can access Westworld and the park, exploring how the hosts themselves actually achieve this further sentience, and what did they decide to do with that. Because there's a brilliant juxtaposition between Dolores/Wyatt, who is clearly on a mission to put robots in charge, to Maeve, who just wants to have her daughter and her love and her sense of normal humanity about her own non-normal or abnormal. So those pieces of it, I think, are what I responded to, and why I didn't expect season 1 to necessarily follow a trajectory of more action or more this or more that. For me, it was, where are they taking me on this journey? And then the man in black becomes kind of the symbol of all of those questions, because he has the same questions. He's just also got a very dark persona exploring those questions. But in many ways, he's asking the ones that we're asking. That's my speech for now.
I agree with everything you just said.
Yeah.
What I'm still saying, though, is I am not a fan of the way that it still ultimately was developed. I agree with everything you just said. I wanted to go on that same journey. I didn't have any expectation. Honestly, I was still excited to see where it was going to go, but I didn't really know. It could have gone so many different ways. But the bottom line is, I still agree with what Samantha said, is that there's just still so many times of them trying to intertwine things that it felt more like work, getting to those moments, because they were not that. You did just say that very articulately, but ultimately I do think that that's still what we all took away from it. I mean, just listening to what everybody just said, I think that everyone here feels very similarly to that. I think they could have just done it a little more streamlined like they did in the first season. That's what I'm saying. And it took away from the overall feeling and experience. It diminished it a little bit.
Okay. All I'm saying is it didn't diminish it for me. That's the moral. If
Well, that's
we're all
it,
agreeing
Kylie.
about the plot,
It
but
just
not the
seems
reaction.
like it needed to pick a direction.
Yes.
It's like they're at their fork in the road, and
Yep.
it can have longevity, but they're not really sure which way they want to go. Because you have the whole Delos political spirituality aspect, and then you have sort of Dolores's rage of the machine take over.
Not rage
And it
against,
just, they
rage
feel
up.
in conflict.
Yes, I agree with that.
I think they knew where they wanted the story to be at for season 3.
Yes.
And I think there were some...
Hopefully. We don't know
Yeah.
yet.
I think they're in a good place to start season 3 based on how this season ended. I think as they got further into season, it did get better. I think it was just that they really needed to, I think we've all kind of said it a little bit, maybe
Flesh
not
out.
Kylie, but just...
Well, I agreed
spread
with the first
some of
4
the-
plotting and the chronology.
Yeah,
I agreed with
I
that.
think even I wanted to see more of the content spread out. I really liked
Yeah.
the Ghost Nation episode, but I also was like, well, where were they through the entire rest of this
yes.
season?
Well,
you
in
kind
season
of
1,
really
to be
end-
fair.
Well,
Moments.
they had such a cool character, and the idea of him coming to the realization himself of, you know, they took things from me, and like they took his love and replaced her with someone, and the idea that the hosts, even before the reveries were out there, were getting these feelings of their past lives, and that Ghost Nation was taking that on and seeing like, oh, they took my son, they took my love, you know, and replaced it with this other person, and thought we wouldn't notice, you know, that whole theme. I really wanted to have seen that more through their interactions, when really they had always throughout them just referred to it as the Ghost Nation, they're the Indians.
Right.
That's
It
it.
would have added to that original complexity that
Yeah.
the first season provided.
And I think that was just the part that I was missing, was the smooth interactions between the different elements of the story. Everything
Yes.
felt more piecemeal
Herky-jerky.
and herky-jerky. They didn't tie it as much together as they did kind of lump it together and call it a season.
I would absolutely agree
That's
with
by
that.
far my favorite episode of the season.
The Ghost Nation
Yeah.
episode.
If you look at it just encapsulated in that one, it just made sense as you watched it. His progression to sentience, basically.
It was very beautiful too, just very beautifully shot and beautiful, sort of poetic in the way that it was scripted. I agree with that. I do agree that the season was herky-jerky. I mean, I won't deny that at all. I don't think it was as smoothly done as season 1. I think that's a very good way to say it. I guess I was responding to... I guess I'm just responding to the overall story trajectory, because Ben, I think you hit it on the money. I think they knew what they were going to do in season 3, and they had to make season 2 come around to it a little bit. And I didn't mind what they did. Well, the other thing I was going to say is that I think everything you're saying is also exemplified by the Teddy character, which is kind of funny. I think Teddy is symbolic of what you're saying. Because she changes his code, and then he has these memories and feelings and worries, and he doesn't know where they're coming from, and then he realizes she's changed his code, and then she changes his code, and then he kind of realizes that he can't be what he isn't.
I kind of like the trajectory with Dolores, where you kind of learn she's really just power hungry, and she's kind of a hypocrite, because the whole reason she gathers feel together is
character's kind of cool.
yeah.
I'm
She
sorry,
doesn't even
I
realize
really
she
like
doesn't
her
even
character.
realize she's doing it
No.
for power. But then when she's saying, "Oh, this is what they do to us. They make us what we aren't. They make us think the way they want." And then she literally does it to Teddy, who she supposedly
That
loves.
was a pretty powerful
That was a
scene.
powerful, yes.
Yeah.
And then the
That's one of those
episodes,
moments.
the episodes where you can see the actions of his programming, but then in his eyes you can see the real Teddy hates it and just it feels violated.
Yes.
Those are my favorite episodes.
Yeah, that's going back to like Jeremy was saying in the beginning, like there were just moments that he felt connected to. That's a great example.
And I mean, in sci-fi it shows the perfect between programming and consciousness. He has the consciousness, but he also is fighting his programming at the same time.
Yeah, good job, James Marsden.
Is he done?
I mean,
I think everyone that went to the Valley Beyond is done. Which was sad because Aki Cheta is like my new favorite character. I mean, I'm glad he got his happy ending, but I would have loved to have seen him and that actor more.
So no, you don't think
That'll
we'll
be a
have any
spin-off
scenes?
series.
Yeah, the Valley Beyond.
There's nothing bad here. It's just all happy.
There's actually grass.
Maybe flashback.
Not grass anywhere else in the damn park.
And I mean, I do like where it ended. I like the idea of Dolores wanting to kill humanity and Bernard being our protector. I can't wait to see where that goes. And just being able to see what this future world is like. Because we've had hints that, like, there aren't that many natural animals, because some people are going to Westworld just to see animals. So I can't wait to see this world. And we still have no idea exactly how far in the future it is.
10 years. No.
Well, and I have more hope for coming back to watch it since I've seen the season 3 trailer, because even though there was that kind of glimmer of, okay, we're getting off the island basically, and we're gonna go check out the rest of the world.
We have to go back.
I was wrong show.
That's what you just said.
I mean, you did kind of touch it.
I felt just kind of done with this series at the end of season 2. It was like, oh, this was a lot of work. I just don't know if it's worth investing my time in this going forward. But then just a couple weeks ago, I saw the season 3 trailer, and it's like, oh, okay. So it seems like they're making progression. So I was almost gone, and they pulled me back.
I was going to say I was kind of excited to see the Samurai World, but those, like, at the same time, there
Didn't contribute much overall.
It didn't.
It was like a side quest.
And it was kind of some of, like, the more strenuous points in the episodes for me. I was like, oh, we're going to see another place other than the western portion. Oh.
So let's talk about Shogun World.
Or the really lame India world.
They only
India
showed.
World.
Yeah, they
but
only showed that for a little bit.
Yeah, that was just Emily /
Shogun.
Grace's
Oh, yeah, Shogun.
hunter fantasy. Big game hunter fantasy. Yeah, Shogun World, which is basically a carbon copy of Westworld, but set in Shogun, Japan.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, at least the storylines were.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did like that whole part of, I'm a writer. I plagiarized myself. So, yeah.
Well, I just like the moment Hector realizes this other person's a copy of him.
Yeah.
I like that scene because I think I had just watched the first episode a little bit before then again, and then I watched that again, and so I picked up pretty quick, like, oh, it's the bank robbing scene. They're big, come into town, roll into town, and we're seeing that, but from here, and like, you can see the characters just like, hang on, I've seen this before.
I actually thought season 2 kind of elevated with the Shogun World, because I was like, oh, wow, there's cool new worlds to explore.
I would have been happier if they would have thrown a reference to Medieval World from the movie, but I just really love the movie.
Maybe they'll still go there, Kyle.
I mean, I'm pretty sure they're going to close all those parks after what happened.
They were cleaning it up. You don't know. I'm just saying.
It just felt like filler.
I mean, I'm
to
pretty
me.
sure they killed all their
What'd
investors,
you say,
but
Samantha? What'd you say?
Oh, right. There's that.
It just felt like filler. It didn't
That's
really...
what
That's
I
how I
felt
felt.
like.
I felt like it
I'm
could
on
have been
your
more
page.
exciting. Like, if some of those characters went with them, but it's like they stepped into this world, they had a little adventure, they laughed, the same people that went into it. I just felt like, at the time, and I love some of those actors, but I didn't feel like it contributed all that much overall to what was going on.
I feel the same.
I think they brought at least the one character out with them, the archer who...
But then she kind of just stood in the
She
background.
just kind of existed and sniped people with her bow and arrow. They didn't really talk more about her, like, moving into this other world. She dressed the part. The one character I did like from Shogun World that they left behind was the one Hector equivalent.
Yeah, the
Musashi.
samurai. That
He
guy
was
was
really
awesome.
cool.
I wanted to... And
I
I liked
actually
that
did
actor.
like that whole fight scene.
There were some good action moments.
It did
that
feel
world.
drawn out in parts, or just excess.
Yeah.
I liked it. I guess I just liked it. I like this season. I don't know.
You're
But
very joyful.
That's
yeah.
fine. You're just in the minority. It's like Kristen with Daredevil.
Yes, but in this case, I'm right.
No, I think you just like to always think that, but I think that the majority
I think you
wins.
like to think the opposite.
No.
So it's fine.
I just think I think the majority is still. I mean, for the I'm not saying that you're wrong to like it. I'm just saying that overall, I think that
Some of the cracks start
Yeah.
to show a little more than the more polished first season.
Yeah.
But it's still a good show. That's like, it probably sounds like I did not like it, but I did enjoy this season. I just saw a lot more things I could nitpick, which I naturally do.
There-
I mean, my mind does
You're
that. I
gonna
can't
s-
help it.
Yeah.
That's fair. And also self-aware. The only real twist in this season was Grace to Emily, because you meet Grace before you realize she is Emily Williams' daughter. We really hit on a lot of stuff. Let me go to, oh no, the other twist is, oh yeah, the end. So let's talk about the finale. Delos sends in basically a security unit because everything's gone to hell in the park. So on the one hand, you've got a bunch of hosts that are going toward the Valley Beyond place. And on the one hand, you have Dolores as Wyatt kind of storming the mesa and making sure she can take over all the things. And one of the things, well, before we get there, and then we have this figment code of Ford that has popped up in Bernard's consciousness and is kind of steering, marionetting, puppeteering the stuff that's happening with Bernard as the sort of trigger for all of it, because he plugs himself in at whatever that place is called.
Cradle.
The Cradle. Good job, Jeremy. Plugs himself in at the Cradle, and then all the stuff starts to happen, including his encounter with Ford and this sort of ghosting programming that is stuck in his head, I
Very
guess.
disturbingly plugged himself in, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ugh.
You know what it kind of reminded me of was the robot lady in Superman 3, and also when the Borg are being made the Borg on Star Trek The Next Generation. But scarier, just saying.
Disturbing.
A little bit disturbing. So the moral of all of this is as Delos is trying to take back the Mesa, Dolores and Bernard team up. They end up killing and replacing the real Charlotte with Dolores' consciousness and Charlotte host body.
And the mysterious, I think, 5 or 7 hosts that she smuggles out.
Correct. Who we don't know who all of them are, although one of them is, she kind of reconfigures Bernard to an Arnold-esque version.
So that's part of the convoluted portion again, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, you can expound on that. That's fine. We're at the end.
I think the balls are weird.
You think what?
The balls are weird.
The balls
the
are
control
weird?
units.
The brains, essentially.
Yeah, it just seems like there would be a more efficient way of transporting them.
It should be plug and play.
That's true. My question was, why didn't they
USB
spend some
does.
time building whatever they were going to do in the park with all the resources and stuff? And where do they end up? Where is that place?
It's the real Arnold's house
Is
that
it?
he was building for before his son died. They established
Oh
that
yeah,
in the
they
first
do
season.
mention that.
That's one
And then
thing.
you learn that Ford had bought it, and then he put a factory to build new hosts there, which is how Dolores rebuilds her body in between.
See, by that point, I was still processing, did all these people just die in the Valley Beyond?
No, it's a Matrix, essentially. 'Cause
It's the Matrix?
Ford, yeah. So what happened was Ford came up with this plan. He wanted hosts to survive, but he knew if they gained consciousness, humanity would swarm in and kill them all. So he knew he could only sneak out 2. So he picked Dolores and Bernard. Bernard he gave a survival instinct because he knew he would be too passive to protect himself. Dolores he made fierce. The rest of them, though, he didn't want them to die, so he created this Matrix program on a satellite where no human could touch them. And so he put all these, essentially another maze,
That was a satellite.
essentially a maze to lead everyone, and he chose Akicheta to lead them because he gained sentience on his own. And so all the hosts that went there are protected. No one can get to them. And Bernard has the encryption to it, which I think is going to be a big thing, is if somebody gets to him, are they going to kill the hosts that are up there?
That's what the encryption key is for?
Access
Yes.
the cloud.
Okay.
It's to access all their...
I just access the cloud.
Yeah.
It's what let them allowed them to access the database at the Forge and to actually get into it, see the data. So even if someone found the Matrix or wherever they transmitted it to, they would still need that encryption key because I mean Delos, even with all their resources, were very keen on getting that encryption key, and to the point of no more human life, we don't need it. Who cares that guests are dying? We need this key to get our research, basically. All the years and the money that they invested was all for that, not for the guests. So.
That part of it I got, because it reminded me of like Conspiracy in the X-Files, or all those evil corporation things you see in science fiction.
Well, they also thought that what the data he was keeping on the satellite was their human research. But really, he didn't care about that at all. It was never his program. He was always planning on hiding the host consciousness so that they would have a world to keep existing in.
I totally missed that this was a satellite.
Yeah.
I did not get that. Maybe that's why I liked it, because I wasn't...
It wasn't, I mean, there's one line about how he put it up where no one could get to it. There's no servers on Earth, nothing where anybody could touch it or access it. Once they made it there, they would be safe forever.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
So season 2, rewatch.
I'm gonna have to. Okay, awesome. But I do agree that the balls, quote unquote, seem pretty inefficient in terms of transportation of their brains. Because if they have a cloud for the one thing, why can't they have a cloud for the other thing?
Well, they kind of talked about that with Abernathy.
I'm sorry. It's just those little things.
The data that the hosts have is so large comparatively. Actually, they even said compared to humans, they're more complex, because they can change their base code, and I like that whole talk about like a human.
Their code fills up. A human's is like 2 pages.
A human's is like a couple lines in a book or something. Whereas like a host, they have infinite possibilities. They were talking about, and they said like a human is deceptively simple in what their drives are, and they even talk about the father. I can't remember his actual name, but
Peter
Delos.
Oh, James.
Yeah, James Delos. Sorry.
Peter Abernathy. James Delos.
The representation of the Forge system talks about how this is the driving moment. This is the key moment in his life, because he always comes here no matter what iteration he runs him through. Millions of them. This always happens. And it's interesting because they show him talking earlier about like, I will do anything for my son, but then it comes to the moment where he could do something for his son and he does not.
Yeah.
And he always makes that choice. So it's like humans lie to themselves about what their true motive is, to the point where that they're so simple that a computer couldn't regenerate them into a new body because of it.
See, I think they planted a lot of good seeds for season 3, and that's one of them. Because that part I did also respond to, and also was very happy they brought back Ben Barnes, because he also is a little bit pretty when he's not being Jigsaw, because that's not pretty. It isn't.
I didn't say anything against
Giving me a look.
I was thinking I'm really looking forward to Aaron Paul being in the 3rd season.
Oh yeah, Aaron Paul.
I mean, hello, Breaking Bad. Is there any Breaking Bad fans in here other than Kyle? No? You don't like Breaking Bad?
Show.
You're both on the list.
I'm surprised by that.
I said I've watched the show.
You don't like
I'm
it?
a huge fan.
Wow. Oh, it's probably too much for... Would you watch Breaking Bad, Samantha?
I tried. It didn't do anything for me.
It gets kind of crazy. I don't know. If you can't handle Jurassic Park, I don't know if you can handle
Dinosaurs, meth-making teacher, whatever.
It goes a little further than just
Meth-making
meth-making
dinosaurs.
I was just
I'd
going
pay to
for
see
a
that.
one-worded sentence.
I think I would have watched that. It's like the dinosaur show, but they
Fallen
make meth.
Kingdom 2.
Anywho, I'm excited for Aaron Paul because he's a good actor, and I don't know what that's going to mean for season 3, but...
I'm excited to see Bernard and Dolores in the real world. Now that they
Yes.
both are fully aware, and they're both aware of each other, are on opposing sides.
And they both recognize they need each other in
Yes.
a way, because Bernard realized, well, I'm too innocent thinking to protect us from the humans. That's why he brought Dolores back in Charlotte's body. And even Dolores realizes I need him to be there to try and temper me or stop me because I might go too far. I like that yin-yang sort of balance they're having between.
Yeah, they're truce at the end. And then at the end where he pretty much tells her, too, that, I won't stand idly by while you try to eradicate humanity.
I'm excited for season 3 because it kind of mirrors one of my favorite video games from the last couple of years, Nier Automata, where it's almost the same premise, actually.
Yes.
If you haven't played it, it's really good. You gotta play it through 3 times, just like you gotta watch the show 3 times to understand everything. Literally, you do.
Hashtag Jeremy's rant. He goes through one every time.
It's a very short rant because I'm going to end it right there.
Okay.
Short to the point.
You're Automata.
So the show continued its use of adapted music, this time rearranging songs like, for example, Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes, Heart-Shaped Box by Nirvana, only this time it was orchestral suites or outright actual use of a song played underneath the action rather than being hinted at through like the player piano. How do you feel it affected your viewing experience
music
this time?
is evolving like the hosts are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Next
brilliant.
level, right?
It's brilliant. I love that composer. I think he's super talented.
He's a genius. I hope someone hires him for
Actually,
film.
you want to talk about following people, because I don't really follow directors and producers and all that, but I definitely follow composers. So that I look forward to seeing all sorts of projects. I mean, he's done other things, but
I'll keep an eye out for you and say, hey, watch this. It's got this guy. Come
I'll
on.
probably already know. But yeah, I agree. I think that the way that he's doing it and intertwining it with, the story is pretty perfect.
I really enjoy it as well. I love to hear.
Apparently, none of them are music.
I know. Only Hillary
there was
and
music
I
in it.
can name
I
that
listened.
tune.
Well, because I'm literally watching. So he's getting excited about, like the movie Easter eggs and stuff like that. And I'm getting excited about the music Easter eggs. I'm like, ah!
Yeah. Kyle.
But that's okay.
Everyone has to specialize in something.
Yeah,
That's
everyone
true.
geeks out about something, right?
Which also goes to show you that even if season 2 isn't as good as season 1, it's still got something for everyone.
It's true. I
There's
just hope
still a
season 3's
vehicle
better.
to get where season 3 wants to be.
Yeah.
The show's main themes of the second season continue to be the bird line of reality, where life and sentience begins and consciousness is a measurement of existence, but now incorporates additional themes around what defines love, choice, and freedom. How do you feel those themes played out?
I mean,
We've talked a lot
Yeah.
about some of those parts and the different changes and the more real. Both the host, I think they did actually a good job of showing the hosts more in a human light for the most part. I think Dolores was the exception. She was going definitely more darker as they went. I started to not like her as much because I was like, man, calm down.
You're supposed to feel that way, though.
Yes, I know that's what they meant for it too, but she definitely became more of the antagonist, less of the victim throughout that season. But
Almost
they
a
show
parallel journey to the Man in Black, one might say. But
yes,
proceed.
they show a lot of the humans showing so much callousness towards their fellow human, even the hosts. And one of the big scenes actually that kicks Bernard off into his "I need Dolores back" was when Elsie goes to basically talk to Charlotte and
Ellie's
says,
in Jurassic Park.
That's probably what happened.
Just
Where
throwing
she
it
goes
out
to
there.
talk to Charlotte about I'm gonna tell the whole world about this, and then Charlotte counters with, well, you could make it big here, and there's a lot of job openings, and she's like, I might be interested, and then Charlotte just goes, well, I know your character better than that, and just kills her. And honestly, I liked Elsie's character.
So did I. I was so happy they brought her back.
I was really happy they brought her back because I was like, I don't think he killed her. I don't think he did.
I mean, they would have showed
didn't
her.
They weren't shy about showing him kill Teresa, and he definitely showed hesitation towards that, but he only had to because Ford was right there.
It was the same with
Elsie
the
stumbled
security
on
guy
there.
Stubbs, when they
Yes.
showed the Indians attack him in the first season and they didn't show it. So I was like, okay.
He's still alive,
yeah.
just captured or something. Exactly.
And
so I was
becomes
very
quite
sad that I
instrumental.
saw her, that she died because of that, and it wasn't because of hosts taking revenge or anything. She was actually a fairly good person.
And
wanted to do the right
smarter
thing.
than everyone around her.
Driven and wanting to do the right thing, and she got
Yeah, not all humans
punished
suck.
for it. Yes.
Ben agrees.
Concur.
I think everything that this season was meant to be about was symbolized by Maeve.
Yeah,
I think
her letting
Maeve-
her daughter go to a better world where no one could get to her.
Yeah, and
Even at the
protecting her.
expense of her own life, because, well, she's probably not dead, but she could be if
Yeah, I
Lee
think
didn't
she's
pull
one of
her
the
out.
balls.
Probably.
Well, I mean, it shows Lee running up to her body, so even if Dolores didn't take her, I think Lee got her, would have found a way to get her out.
She is his precious creation. He does enjoy her the best.
Well, and they have little
Robert
hint-
also says that she is his favorite as well.
She's the favorite of pretty much everyone, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is kind of a kick-ass character. And
she did run a whorehouse. She is people's favorite.
She is a people person.
Oh, Jeremy's at that stage.
She's one of my favorite characters.
I know. Other than, let's see, we got a little bit of hopes and dreams from Kyle for season 3, which is not slated to premiere until next year, 2020, probably around this time.
They're getting into that habit where it's a year and a half between seasons of all their shows now.
It's kind of weird because they finished filming them so much further before that. I know there's special effects work and stuff, but the wait is hard.
They don't got another idea, so they got to stretch this moneymaker.
Well, and we've talked about this on other podcasts. I'm sure you have on other ones that I wasn't on. But like one of the points that we frequently make on like one of our regular groups is that there's so much option out there today. That's the problem, is that people want to get to the, especially if it is a big show that they're trying to really get people addicted to. Well, even though the loyalty for the show is there, it's hard to, remain to that level of addiction if you have to wait for forever for it. Well, wait for forever in the world of this fast-paced, super saturated TV.
Much binge.
Yeah.
Well, one of my problems is, even after the first season, I didn't know the second one finally came out, and I forgot about the show.
Well, there you go.
And I can't count how many shows that's happened to me in the past 5 years. I've forgotten even existed. And they're not on my radar to watch anymore. Right. So I don't have a neat little list that has 500 shows on it like Kylie does.
Which I maintain, which you put yourself on.
I know I'm on so many shows podcast lists. Oh my God.
It happens.
Well, so really my question though was, what do you hope or predict to see in season 3, other than of course killer robots taking over the world?
Aliens. No, I'm just kidding.
That's a different podcast.
It's far enough in the future, I think.
Well, I just like that it's getting out of, even though it's still called Westworld, it's getting out of the park. At least I hope from the little bit that we've seen so far that it is truly outside the park. But I guess I wouldn't be surprised if there was a head fake in there somehow trapped in another park.
Bring the T-Rex to the mainland.
The end kind of strikes me as Lost World-esque in a way. We're just not to the mainland yet.
So
within
it'll make more sense they're going to get back to Westworld and just
probably
reverse all that.
Or they'll find like the prototype world where they were actually just kind of experimenting before they built the park.
I mean, you have to infiltrate. It's the whole point. And it still makes more sense than, dinosaurs.
The dinosaurs made sense.
They didn't have the character development.
They gene spliced.
It just...
From amber, preserved,
there really is no
fossilized frog.
There's no logic in bringing a T-Rex to California.
I agree. That is the weakest entry in the series.
I am looking for, even though season 2 was not my favorite, I didn't hate it. I just didn't love it like the first season. But I'm always hopeful that, like you guys were saying, you really feel it's building into the third season. Perhaps that will be true, and perhaps it will be amazing. I just hope it really will still be like the first season was.
In terms of the storytelling.
Yes.
Not the same plot.
Yes, and the pacing and intertwining them, like Ben said earlier with the second season. It wasn't...
Smoothed it.
If
it's as smooth or at least closer to
the pacing
the
with the
season.
action, with the development, and the heavy-headedness.
I hope they take the gravitas of some of the scenes in season 2 and mixes it with the storytelling of season 1. And whoop, you got me.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. And
I hope they don't try and play with time again.
Yeah. Oh, please, God.
Stop.
No, I was so confused.
Going back to
I'm
a
done with
linear
that part.
format.
Tell me body switching. No more body switching.
There was since we've already brought up Lost, there was a point where, like, those flashbacks got super old. In certain regard.
And then they flashed forward. And then they flashed sideways.
Stop it!
If you're flashing back to tell some backstory, that's fine. Like the wife that kills herself, all that stuff, cool. The
better understanding of the world,
the
that
ghost
works.
station,
Yes.
And
that's
the motivations
fine.
and all of that.
But if you're trying to trick me into thinking it's
just
an hour ago, no.
Just stop it. Yes.
I don't know that I have any specific hopes or predictions. I am excited for it. I really kind of want to see what happens. I was left.
You only have a year to wait.
I know. Well, and I might forget how excited I was since I just watched this not too long ago. I mean, that is a valid point. I hate the way HBO stretches out some of its scheduling for sure, as opposed to some other channels and streamers.
But didn't you have to go back and watch last season of Game of Thrones before the new one came out too a little bit?
No, but that's because I'm hyper obsessed. So, Westworld, I cannot qualify myself as close to hyper obsessed. I'm getting obsessed in terms of the complexity of it and wanting to know the answers, but not necessarily like Game of Thrones. I was so excited for, historically speaking, for it to come on that I would have trouble sleeping the night before. So I was so excited. Westworld, I can sleep fine. And I'll be fine in 2020 when I apparently does not. So, here are the key questions. Would you still recommend Westworld after season 2?
Yes, I already did.
You did?
To Adam.
Good.
Like, is it worth
I mean,
watching? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's worth watching. It's just, I would still say, you're not going to probably love it as much as season 1, but it's still decent
I'm
for
not
TV.
calling people up to tell them about it like it was season 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with that statement. But if they said, hey, should I watch the second season still? I would be like, I think you should.
I'd be like, oh yeah, so I can have somebody to argue with about it.
I would recommend it, but I'd give the disclaimer, like, honestly, the first 5 episodes don't pace very well. It's really the end part of the season as things start to culminate that kind of get a little bit better, or get a lot better, and everything starts to come to a head. Whereas the first 5 seem like unnecessary setup for where they had left it, and like a slow build that didn't need to be there. I'd let them know, because the first 4 seasons I watched them as they came out.
First 4 episodes.
First 4 episodes.
I was like,
I can
whoa.
see the future of him.
Awesome. Ben, we'll talk.
The first 4 episodes, I watched them as they came out, and then after that, the 4th one, I was just so burned out on the
And your wife jumped the
slow,
shark.
and my wife was done with it, so
She's
of
like,
course
done.
I
Shout out to Lisa if you're
no
listening.
longer wanted to watch any of them, so they fell off my radar. So
I'm going to be the voice of dissension and say, nah.
Do
You know what? It's fine.
Do you have qualification for your nah?
Well, this is assessing only season 2.
Feels like work.
Feels like work. Yes. Then my nah is before I saw any other trailers. So, because I was definitely done with it by the time I got to the end of season.
Even after you watched that last little scene like an hour ago?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. She knows what she likes and doesn't.
Kyle, would you recommend it?
I mean, yeah, I would tell people that it's not as good as the first season, but it's still, I mean, I would say good actors, just continue it.
When people have been asking me when I was talking about it, my answer was a lot of people seem to not like the second season as much. I didn't feel the same, but if you like majority opinion, that's what's being said. That's literally what I said. I am. But there's coworkers that know that I do this podcast. Several of them were watching Westworld, but had not watched past the first season and asked me, and I said, I liked it, but I don't think a lot of people liked it. That's what I said. And I think I'm right. Here's the $1 million question. Are you going to keep watching?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
A,
Yes.
we're doing this podcast. B,
Okay, so then when you say it like that, I
No,
have to say because
no.
you want to or
no.
because you have
I
to?
I still want to watch
Okay.
it. I still have to know where it's going. I just hope that it's improved.
I'm gonna still watch it. I want to see where they go.
Yeah, I'm with Hillary. I have to know where it goes, even though I'm not that invested in the show. I'm invested in the outcome of everything.
Same.
I'll watch the beginning of the 3rd season, but it's going to have to catch me quick.
Oh.
She just threw out a thread.
She said, or else.
She's like, there better be naked men in the first
Whoa. You took it to a very specific place.
That's Jeremy for you. Samantha, meet Jeremy.
I'm blunt, you know this.
She doesn't actually.
She should by now.
It's been 2 hours.
Well, I'm certainly going to keep watching because I have to know I want to know I like the show. Let's go. I rhymed.
And there would be a podcast
Whoa.
if she didn't watch it.
That's true. I have to moderate this thing. So typically I will watch them, but I actually want to I do want to watch this show. Do I want to watch it as much as, say, Stranger Things? No. I think Stranger Things is my number 1 I have to watch right now, but Westworld I do need to watch in terms of I want to know what happens. And I want to know about the Man in Black. And I want to know what happened to Maeve, and she better be back.
I want to see robots taking over the world.
They
Yeah.
will. There will definitely be a war of
It
robots.
can still be thoughtful, but I want to see that happen.
And then I want to see season 17 where the robots think they're human and you live. Oh, they're not! Again,
Why does
all
that
over
have to
again.
happen in 17?
It's so specific.
That sounds like season 4.
I think that's 4.
I have a prediction for season 17, since he brought it up. You find out that all the Amazon Alexas are actually hosts.
But you know what?
And they
That's
go on and kill
legit.
That there's a little
It's the
ball in the
cautionary tale.
Alexas.
That's legit.
That's a lot of product placement. Amazon will be very happy.
Bezos. Oh my gosh, she's like Ford.
I mean, he's probably listening right
Hey, Dolores,
now.
Oh
play
my
Jeopardy.
gosh. Stop it, Jeff Bezos. Do not come to Grand Rapids.
Don't stop. We're in the Matrix.
He would just
as
send
it
a
is.
drone.
You would just send a drone.
Anything else you want to say about season 2 of Westworld? Hearing none on the sales floor, what I'd like to do is thank Jeremy, Kyle, Samantha, Hillary, and Ben for joining me once again to talk about Westworld, and in such a passionate way. But before we get too far gone, here's the end credits. Couch Potatoes Unite! Was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kelsey Rezmer. Kelsey played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole kit and caboodle was engineered and produced by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. Give us stars, give us comments, give us reviews. Let us know how we're doing. Send us a message. We might just read it on the podcast. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what we should keep, what we should toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions on shows we might consider, contact us at our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, where we have a guest book, by email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, or via our social media, Facebook, Twitter at CPU Podcast, and Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite. Though, of course, we add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time. We always have several more new episodes coming down the pike. Just listen to our intros. And if you miss old episodes or want to know in general what we cover, just find us. We are everywhere and searchable wherever you look for things on the internet. You can search for us, or you can subscribe at our website, our channels, our social media accounts. Stay up on our new events and episodes. Until the next time, all available seasons of Westworld are available to stream on HBO Go or HBO Now, which means you can probably pay extra and access the series via places like Amazon Prime, who we've already product placed, and Hulu. In the meantime, our Westworld panel will next reconvene following the conclusion of the airing of Season 3, which, as we said, is not expected to drop until 2020, and who knows when exactly. So until next time, until next episode, new episodes are published every Wednesday. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned